afternoon and welcome to the final planning board meeting of 2024, the December 9th meeting. We'll call the meeting to order, and if we could have a moment of silence, please. And if we could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Diane, any items of information?
We do, and Shannon's going to go first.
Oh, wonderful.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hi. Some happy news today. I'd like to introduce you to Alicia Harris. She is our newest member of the planning department, started with us in October. Alicia graduated with her master's in urban and regional planning with a concentration in natural resource management from the Virginia Tech campus in Washington. And she completed her Bachelor of Arts in Public Policy at the University of Chicago with a concentration in inequality and urban development. She also has experience with federal proposal development and did an internship with the District Department of Transportation. So she is the first Planner 2 in the Long Range Planning Division within our department. She'll be helping out a lot with transit. Today she was checking on our bus stop art murals, and she'll have a big role in community engagement. So please help me welcome Alicia.
Welcome, Alicia. Welcome. All right. Thank you, Shannon. Diane, you have an item as well?
So after 11 years with us, current Planner 2, Shelley Mayo, has decided to leave us to go to the town of Morrisville. So I just wanted to let you all know that her last day is this Friday.
Oh, well, thank you, Shelley, for your service. Congratulations on your new adventure in Morrisville. Apex is still the peak of good living. I will move to public comment. The purpose of public comment is to allow the public to speak on any items that did not appear on the agenda under public hearings. Any member wishing to speak, I encourage you to sign up to my left, your right. Is that right? My right, your left. Anybody would like to speak on the public comment? Anybody signed up?
As of right now, we don't have any public speakers for any.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, so we will move along to the consent agenda. We have one item. Those are the minutes from our November 4th meeting. I assume everyone had an opportunity to review those. If there are any comments or motions.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, thank you so much. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. And we will move on to public hearings. Again, if you would like to speak on for a public hearing, please sign up. And Jenna, you're going to present on item 1. That's a hearing and possible motion regarding amendments to the 2045 land use map.
Hi, good afternoon. Today I'll be presenting public hearing number 1. Oh, can you hear me? Is that a little bit better? Oh, can you hear me now? Is that okay? Tell me if I need to adjust it. I'll be presenting for public hearing number 1, proposed amendments to the 2045 land use map and transportation plan, consistent with recommendations in the adopted Western Big Branch area plan, encompassing portions of the Friendship and New Hill communities. So just a quick reminder of the plan adoption timeline. At the Planning Board's November 4th meeting, the board unanimously recommended plan adoption, and at the November 21st meeting, Town Council unanimously voted to adopt the plan. And the proposed amendments that I'm gonna briefly go through are exactly as presented in the adopted plan, so I don't plan to walk through each one individually. But if you have any questions at the end, I can definitely go back and we can look at anything together. So this first exhibit displays the proposed amendments to the 2045 land use map, and the numbers next to each amendment correspond with the map IDs in Table 1 of your staff report. So I'll just leave each one up for a few seconds, then go to the next. This exhibit displays the proposed amendments to the Thoroughfare and Collector Street Plan map, and again, the numbers on next to each amendment correspond with Table 2 in your staff report. And on this exhibit, it displays the proposed amendments to the Bicycle and Pedestrian System Plan map, and the numbers in the amendments correspond with Table 3 in your staff report. And then finally, this exhibit displays the proposed amendments to the context areas map. And we didn't get into too much detail with this during the public hearing presentation, so I'll give a little more context on what the context areas map includes. So this map divides the town into 4 context areas: rural, suburban, transit-oriented development, and town center. And the context areas are used to describe the development style, travel mode priorities, and street design considerations. And these 3 proposed amendments are in alignment with the proposed amendments to the land use map. So I'll go through each one of these individually. The first one is along New Hill Holloman Road in the area, in this area, and the proposal is to change the context area from rural to suburban. The next one is just a little bit east in the Bosco Road area, and the proposal is to change the context area from suburban to rural to match the land use. And then finally, the third one is to change the context from suburban to rural in the vicinity of Friendship Road and Pleasant Plains Road, again to align with the 2045 land use map. And these exhibits correspond with Table 4 in your staff report. So the requested motion today is to recommend amendments to the 2045 land use map and the transportation plan consistent with the Western Big Branch Area Plan, encompassing portions of the Friendship and New Hill communities. And planning staff recommend approval of the proposed amendments. And I'm happy to try to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Jenna. Do we have any questions for Jenna? Thought I saw you finger twink. No, okay.
Everything's consistent.
All right. All right. If no questions, thank you, Jenna. All right, do we have any, anybody signed up to speak, or here to speak, on behalf of, the proposed changes in public hearing? Jenna, do we have anybody signed up?
Somebody in the audience. Yeah, did you want to speak, sir?
Yep, okay.
There was a gentleman in the audience that raised his hand.
Oh, I'm so sorry, I missed that. Did you want to, I didn't see. Did someone want to speak on? Oh. He is wearing that bright color there. It's hard to. All right. If there is no one who wants to speak on this matter, I will close public hearing and bring it back to the board for discussion and possible motion.
As I blurted out before, I will be happy to move approval as submitted based on my review of the staff report, staff analysis. Everything appears to be consistent with the adopted Western Big Branch plan, and this was all forthcoming.
I will second the motion.
Good. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Jenna. All right, item number 2, Joshua, public hearing and possible motion regarding rezoning case 24 CZ18, the Sweetwater PUD amendment. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Joshua Killian, Planning Department, here to present rezoning case 24 CZ18, Sweetwater PUD amendment. This amendment is for only the non-residential and mixed-use areas of the Sweetwater development. It is located just south of the US 64 intersection with Jinks Road and Richardson Roads. As I said, the affected area for this rezoning includes all of the non-residential and mixed-use areas of the Sweetwater development, with the exception of the parcels containing the Harris Teeter Grocery Store and the Harris Teeter Fuel Center. The current zoning of the property is planned unit development, conditional zoning. All properties to the south and east of this rezoning are also within PUDs. To the south is a continuation of the Sweetwater PUD. To the east are both Smith Farm on this side, and then here is the continuation of Sweetwater with the Harris Teeter sites. To the north, across US 64, we have rural residential, neighborhood business, and planning unit development conditional zoning. And then to the east is Tech Flex along US 64, light industrial, and rural residential as you move south. The proposed zoning is to continue the planning and development conditional zoning on the property, but the applicant is proposing to add the use bar, nightclub, wine bar, or tap room to the PUD. The 2045 land use map identifies this area as being in the Community Mixed Use Activity Center, and the use classifications on the properties within this rezoning are mixed use, high density residential, office employment, and commercial services. The proposed use to be added is consistent with that land use classification. The applicant did conduct 2 neighborhood meetings, one on September 26th, the second on November 19th of 2024, and those reports are in your agenda packet. This rezoning case was exempt from meeting with the Environmental Advisory Board per the UDO, and no Wake County Public Schools letter of impact was requested for this rezoning since there's no increase in residential entitlement. The applicant is proposing to make the following changes to the PUD text. First is adding the use bar, nightclub, wine bar, or tap room to the list of allowed uses, but only on the east side of Richardson Road, which would be now considered non-residential mixed-use areas east on the PUD layout sheet. And then also they are amending the table to now show separate columns for both the east and the west to ensure that the designation for this use is only on the east side of Richardson Road. As you can see here on the PUD layout, the change for the non-residential mixed-use areas, now noting which one is west and which one is east. Planning recommends approval of rezoning case 24 CZ18 as submitted by the applicant. The proposed rezoning is reasonable and in the public interest, as it will allow an increase in diversity of commercial uses within the mixed-use areas of the development. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer, and the applicant is also here.
Thank you so much, Joshua. Any questions at the moment? All right. Very good. And I have Mr. Waldo? Yes. Yes, sir. I will open public hearing and invite you to come up. Gentle reminder that that all folks speaking have 3 minutes, unless you have a couple of folks with you. And the intent of that for the applicant is so that your presentation is not duplicative of staff's presentation. Please bring those highlights. We don't want to cut off conversation, but just want to keep it for new information.
Sure. Well, I don't really have a whole lot to say. So, you know, the premise of this was created when we uncovered unknowingly that we were after a tenant, the Dram and Draft, which is one of those bourbon, high-end bourbon enclaves or whatever you want to call it. And we've seen some new wine bars too, you know. So just like we've done with everything else out there. We want it to be local, we want it to be small businesses, and yet we still want to think about that event lawn and what might be going on with all the stuff eventually we'll have out there, and make it just a fun place. So that's all.
Thank
I'll
you.
answer any questions if you got any.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any questions for Mr. Waldo?
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I actually have a planning staff question. This is just a technicality, but I think, as we know, many grocery stores operate bars, tap rooms inside. How does this, like, was the Harris Teeter able to have that as a secondary and accessory use prior to this?
Yes. The use itself is basically considered what the main tenant's operation is. So the grocery store, as an accessory use, can have bars, things like that within themselves.
Okay. Just curious. Thank you.
I don't think I officially opened public hearing, so I'm gonna open officially. Does anybody else want to speak on this? All right, so I will close public hearing, and bring it back to the board for additional questions or possible motion.
Well, I am certainly qualified to speak on this, and I am certainly in favor. And I just wanted to get that out there right off the bat.
I'm excited I wouldn't have to travel to Durham anymore.
Well, I just think that's a great use for that area, and it's much needed, and I will certainly be in approval.
Is that a motion?
That will be a motion to approve rezoning 24CZ 18.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. All right, moving on to new business. Bruce.
Good evening, Chair, Board. Under new business today, we're going to present some possible motions to make some amendments to the Unified Development Ordinance. The first amendment before you today, so as you may be aware, that in early 2024, you all probably provided a recommendation and it was approved to update the exterior lighting portion of our ordinance to be more compliant with, addressing backlight, uplight, and glare features within the town to create a more friendly, dark place environment. Over the last, several months, there have been conversations with staff and from applicants and design professionals who've raised some concerns about challenges meeting these new standards and guidelines when it comes to a very specific type of use. And that use is particularly within the loading dock areas or storage areas in industrial sites. So the first amendment that we're going to talk about today is going to address kind of the difficulties and why this amendment, or why we're proposing these amendments for you today. I have a little graphic here. Hopefully you can see it well enough on the screen. What we're showing here is a loading dock area for large vehicles. The green here shows what would be in compliance. The little teal circles here are my best representation of where the lighting fixtures would be. Along the edge, if you follow the mouse here, you can see these would be light poles, large light poles, and the ones along this area here would be building mounted fixtures. The difficulty is when you have such great distance here, so that you can see, it's hard to see, but this is 60 feet from this edge all the way down to this where the red line begins. And again, then from this edge to where the light pole is, you have another 65 feet. So what that creates is it creates an issue with having what we call dark zones. And so with the green is what would be in compliant with our current code. The yellow is getting very close to being out of compliance. It may be creating some kind of safety issues on the site itself. And the red is completely out of compliance. We're creating really bad dark zones and kind of ruining the feel and the uniformity of the light on the site itself. Another area where this is another example of this is when we have loading docks from two buildings. This large white area is one building. This other area is another building. And again, we have the light fixtures here. And it's hard to see, but because the light fixtures are under the current code are limited to 2,500 lumens, it creates a very small area that can actually be in compliance. And the rest of the areas are either barely in compliance or, as you can see here from the red, completely out of compliance, creating kind of an unsafe, unfunctional area. So for you today, we have one option to address this issue is we are wanting to add a section called alternative compliance. Essentially what this allows is it gives the planning director or their designee the ability to approve an alternative form of compliance for sections 6.3 and 6.4. It has to be demonstrated on a lighting plan submitted by a licensed professional that this is necessary. This isn't just, oh, I don't want to do this, I don't want to pay for this. This is for my site to work and to be safe and to try and meet the intent of the ordinance. This is what would be required, and they'll have to demonstrate that on an official stamped license plan. Some of the considerations, these are similar to other areas of the UDO that currently allow the planning director to make these decisions. We have them listed here. Number one is they should consider that the existing and proposed uses for the site. They should consider adjacent uses, consider existing and proposed topography, location configuration of the buildings on site and on adjoining properties, existing and proposed evergreen screening, proposed house side shields, size and configuration of the parcel, proximity to public rights-of-way, and then number 9, number 9 is residential zone properties. Number 10, this was presented to your Environmental Advisory Board because they worked very hard on the new lighting ordinance as well. And number 10 is their recommendation. They asked that we include a condition that the planning director would consider the proximity to any kind of resource conservation area or area that might be naturally sensitive. And number 11, that is consistent with the intent of this ordinance overall. And then the amendment here, the section in 8.64, just kind of states that, if they cannot reasonably meet the application of the ordinance as it's written, they may submit the alternative compliance. We did update some of the language in subsections E. Before it just said fixtures, we changed it to pole-mounted fixtures because we really wanted to designate that the only time you're allowed to go up to the maximum, which is the 15,500 lumens, is when you're using a pole fixture itself, and that there would still be a limitation on any building mounted fixtures, things on the wall. There's some technical corrections here. Number 1, we're just changing must to shall to be more consistent and consistent with the rest of the UDO itself. Number 2 is where we're changing it to allow building mounted fixtures to exceed the 2,500 lumens when it is located within the TexFlex or the light industrial zoning districts and is associated with a use that is within the industrial service production within our 4.2 of the use table and is designated loading dock area on a site plan. So in this instance, they would be allowed to go beyond that 2,500 lumens when they can demonstrate that they meet all the criteria of being either in TexFlex, light industrial zoning districts, and that they are associated with a loading dock designation, and that they are one of the uses listed in industrial services or production uses. Number 3, again, just a technical correction. We're changing must to shall to be more consistent as well. And that is the first part of the lighting amendment. Amanda will come up and present some of the other amendments to you as well. If you have any questions regarding this one, I'm happy to answer them for you today.
I've got one question, and first of all, great job on your presentation. If you go back to the list that the planning director shall consider, just a quick question: as this is an administrative remedy, is it and there may or may not have been discussion about this, and so I'm just curious, is the planning director required to consider, based on the way that it's written, all of those or any of those?
They must consider all of those elements, yes, sir.
And so do they have to pass all of those, or reason why I'm asking is since this is an administrative remedy and so there needs to be some objectivity in it. 11 is a pretty heavy number, and so I just didn't know if that had been considered in terms of the requirement to meet 11 standards, and was that possible? Was that, I mean, of course it may be possible, but what was the likelihood of being able to meet all 11?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the intent was to, by offering this administrative relief, we don't want it to just be kind of what we sometimes refer to as like a corner office variance where someone can just kind of permit it, changes or deviations from the ordinance itself. So this is really to set the standard that if you're coming to us with this alternative form of compliance, that we are going to hold you to a very high standard. We're going to consider all these conditions because this is what we would look at, and our UDO probably goes even beyond some of this already. So if you can't meet that, we're going to hold you to these standards, and will have to demonstrate, which I think for a design professional, that's something that's completely within their wheelhouse. They can totally demonstrate that. And if it does seem extreme, that's just, I think the 11, a lot of them are really kind of make sense. This is an industrial area. How often is that going to be adjacent to a residential site or things like that?
Absolutely. Okay. Understood. And just kind of thinking out loud in terms of whether or not that had been considered about any or all. So thank you for that response. The other is, and forgive me because I didn't see this in my reading of your analysis. So if I missed it, I apologize. Is the existing standard also taking into account whether or not the fixtures, whether pole mounted or building mounted, are cut off, semi cut off, or full cut off? And because it appears to be focusing just on the lumens, and so I didn't know whether or not you all had also looked at by chance the cutoff styles of the fixtures, which can help broaden and widen the spread of the light.
Yeah, and I think the intent when the original amendment was updated, in the January 2024, there was a lot of thought put into it and how they were going to address that. They really wanted the full cutoff. They wanted that to be the standard. So we thought about that, but we did not address raising that angle, that degree that would allow like full cutoff, half cutoff, anything like that, because we wanted them to come and present us with kind of the bare minimum it would take to get the site into compliance.
Okay.
We worried that if we allowed that as part of a regular standard, that they would all go to that. They would all attempt to do that stuff.
And I certainly agree in terms of never being able to see the source. Absolute no. Just sometimes you can find solutions through not only through the luminosity, but also through the kind of blinders that you have on through the cutoff or full cutoff measures. Okay, understood. Thank you so much.
So I'm curious as to, I hear that since we passed the lighting ordinance prior, we've had some issues come up. I'm curious as to how often these issues have arisen, that this was needed to be developed. Like how often the planning director will have to weigh in on this.
To this date, I've only been made aware of a few times in the last several months. This will really just depend. It's hard to kind of predict where the market's going to go as far as the land that's developable around Apex itself. So it may vary. Ideally, this rarely gets used, and that people are able to come in and design their site in ways that they're able just to follow the standards as they're written. But in the off chance where people are coming in and investing large amounts of capital and money, we want to be able to make sure that, one, we're offering options for them, but two, also sticking to what people of Apex have voted on and established.
Understood. Thank you. That's helpful. Additional questions? All right, Amanda, I think you had second part.
These next two are much simpler. The next amendment is related on changes to state law. Again, to the definition of built upon area. They tweaked it once several months ago and then tweaked it again. And so this is to simply add the phrase, or include artificial turf that's manufactured to allow water to drain through the backing as built upon area. And then the next one, I should pause. Are there any questions about this? We have to make the change, so I didn't know if there were any questions.
It is what it is.
Yeah. And then the last amendment is related to the recent amendments to the temporary sign ordinance. There were some changes that needed to be updated in the table that weren't made correctly, and so we're just showing this. So these symbols indicate whether the sign type is allowed with a permit, not allowed, or allowed with the permit, and this chart was not consistent with the text, so now we're just simply making the chart consistent with the text. And that's all that's the rest of the amendments. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Those were much easier.
Yeah, much easier.
Any questions for Amanda? All right, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion and possible motion.
I mean, other than the state mandated amendment, I mean, I think this shows that the town listens and is acting on feedback of actually applying ordinances, which is a good thing. So I'm in favor and would support make a motion to approve the proposed UDO amendments.
Thank you.
I would second, and would just add that, you know, for the development community and for the public at large, knowing and understanding that any zoning ordinance is a living, breathing document, and it's not in concrete, and it needs to constantly be updated and modernized and dialed in. And so I too applaud staff for taking on these kinds of amendments, not only mandatory amendments, obviously, but listening to the community. Lighting can be really complex. It's funny, it can be one of the shortest chapters in your ordinance, but it's incredibly complex and can be difficult. So I applaud that, as well as administrative remedies, rather than forcing someone to go in front of and seek a variance. So I will second that particular motion.
Thank you. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Before I call for the possible motion, I do want to say congratulations to Daniel, who our colleague who welcomed a new addition to their family. So congratulations, and Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah and Happy Kwanzaa and Happy Holidays to all those who celebrate. I hope that you all have peace and joy for the remainder of 2024. Can I have a motion, please?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. You too.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Yeah. Thank you all.